So, good morning. Welcome to the live webinar on the results of the 23rd edition of the report of on the state of renewable energies in the European Union. My name is Uta Zeringer. I'm from the Renewables Academy, and I will be moderating this session today. On our agenda for the webinar, we have small insights reports about every chapter. Tarini, could you give me the rights to click, please? So with the agenda, we follow more or less the chapters of the EurObserv'ER's annual report, and you will get the key results from the chapters energy indicators, renewable energy sources, heating and cooling in buildings, investment indicators, socio-economic impacts, risk costs, prices and cost competitiveness, innovation and competitiveness indicators, and avoided fossil fuel use and avoided greenhouse gas emissions. Just Harini. Thank you. All team members did a great job in researching, collecting, and calculating and interpreting the indicators and preparing the report. This webinar is for us a highlight every year because we can talk about the findings. Today with me is the team, and your presenters will be Diane Lesko from Observer. She is a team lead in this EurObserv'ER project, and she will provide you a brief overview of the project. Katja Terzi from Observer will talk about energy indicators. Julia Panni from Fraunhofer ISI will report about renewable energy sources in buildings and the investment indicators. Floris Uhlemann from TNO Energy Transition will talk about socio-economic impacts, costs of renewable energy use, prices and cost competitiveness, and also about innovation and competitiveness indicators. And Ilse Morkins from Vito will talk about avoided fossil fuel use and avoided greenhouse gas emissions. So I would like to hand over now to Diane Lesko from Observer. Thank you.
Sorry. So you have seen all the presentation, which was not supposed to happen. I don't have yes. Okay, sorry for that. I'm Diane Lesko. I'm a director of Observer, and I'm a coordinator of this project with Frédéric Thuillier, head of research here. And I will have the pleasure to introduce you to the project. Observer founded the EurObserv'ER barometer in 1999 and has been coordinating this program since then with the financial support of the European Commission and ADEME, the French Energy Agency, for the French versions of the barometers. We would like to extend our thanks to these two sponsors for their continuous support. With the EurObserv'ER project, our consortium aims to support the Commission in monitoring and assessing the deployment of RES in the EU and in each individual member states. Our extended data collection and treatment enables us to produce a set of meaningful indicators which are analyzed and explained in our various publications. In the thematic barometers, we cover one sector every 2 months, and starting with wind power and PV, which we have already published this year and are available on the website. And then we follow with solar thermal and CSP. PV in July. September barometer is focused on either ocean energy, heat pumps, or biogas. Then comes RES in transport in October, November, and solid biomass at the end of the year. These thematic barometers are focused on energy indicators and comment on impactful news in the sector under focus for the individual member states. And it also dwells on what is happening at industry level in Europe as well as globally. Our second main publication is the one under focus in the webinar. That is to say, the State of Renewable Energies in Europe. This is the 23rd issue of the kind, and it is based on data collected in 2024. The whole team contributes to it. Each member of the consortium is responsible for a couple of chapters, and we will detail our finding in the next slides. Our readership is quite diverse, as you may see, and also makes a significant use of all the material that we post on the website. This graph here, this figure here of 180,000 downloads for 2024 records all the downloads of documents that have been uploaded on the website. So not only the barometers, but also the country profiles and case studies that we have here. Now a few words on the website. I can see. So you can here find all the latest barometers on the landing page. You have a section on country profiles, which detail the main indicators per member states and the main support policies implemented to support RES deployment. You have case studies on innovating financing schemes and all barometers in French and English. Please pay attention to the database here, which regroups all data from the overview and thematic barometers, and you can make your own request and publish and download and publish the graphs. We also have a press corner where you can download already made tables and graphs. Here you have the detailed content of the publication. Each partner will explain its findings, but as regards to the energy indicators that we lead, I would like to point out the sub-chapters as electricity storage and renewable communities, energy communities. You can freely download the reports in French and English on our website. For those who don't want to read the 300 pages, we have done an executive summary as well that you can download also, and you will be able to get a printed paper copy if you go to the EUCEF in June in Brussels, the EU Sustainable Energy Week from 10 to 12th June in Brussels. Then I will hand over to Katia Terzi for the energy indicator. Thank you.
Yes, we will listen to some findings or key findings about energy indicators now. Well, the message is renewable electricity is back on track after bouncing back in 2023. The European Union is now getting close to hitting the 50% mark. Even though heating demand was lower across the European Union last year, renewable heating and cooling held steady. And for the first time, we have crossed the 25% mark. But there is still work to do. In 2023, renewables made up to 24.6% of our total energy consumption, but to reach the 42.5% percentage target by 2023, this means in 5 years, we'll need consistent, well-coordinated efforts across all European Union member states. The floor is now on Katia Terzi from EurObserv'ER.
Thank you, Jutta, for the floor. So I am Katia Terzi, research analyst with EurObserv'ER, and I will guide you through the energy indicators from our overview barometer. Oh, sorry. So the first area to highlight is electricity generation. So between 2022 and 2023, the production of renewable electricity across the European Union increased significantly. This sharp rise marks a clear rebound after a disappointing 2022, when renewable electricity output barely moved. So this recovery can be explained by two main factors. Firstly, climate conditions were more favorable in 2023, particularly for hydropower and wind energy. Second, the second factor that can explain this surge in renewable electricity is that there is a continued investment over the past 2 years, particularly for the wind farm and the solar PV projects. And that this led to an increase in capacities for these technologies. When we look at the renewable electricity sources, wind energy remained the leading contributor in 2023, and hydropower ranked second. So after a difficult year in 2022, marked by severe drought, hydro recovered significantly in 2023, which, as mentioned earlier, played a key role in boosting overall renewable electricity output. So overall, by the end of 2023, renewable electricity accounted for 45.3% of EU total gross electricity consumption. So this is an increase of 4.1 percentage point compared to 2022, when the share stood at 41.2%. At a country level, Austria and Sweden led the way with respectively 87.8 for Austria and 87.5 for Sweden. Sorry. So now if we look at the distribution of additional electrical capacity, we can see that in 2023, renewable clearly dominated across the European Union. In particular, solar and wind power with respectively 71% and 21% of all new capacity added this year in Europe. So now let's turn to heating and cooling. Between 2022 and 2023, renewable energy consumption in the EU for heating and cooling remained stable overall. This happened despite a general decline in heating and cooling demand, largely due to milder temperatures. In terms of technology distribution, solid biofuels are still the main source of renewable heat, but their share is slowly shrinking. At the same time, heat pumps' contribution is steadily gaining ground. And so overall, by the end of 2023, renewable sources made up for 26.2% of the EU total energy consumption for heating and cooling. So this is a modest but meaningful increase of 1.2 percentage points more than in 2022. Looking at individual member states, the highest share are found in forested countries, which have ready access to biomass. Sweden is a great example of that. So the country led the rankings with a 67.1 share in 2021, although this was done by 2.7 points from the year before. The country still benefits from a well-developed forestry sector and a widespread use of heat pump in the homes. And so lastly, let's take a look at the broader picture of gross final energy consumption. So in 2023, 24.6 of the European Union gross final energy consumption came from renewable sources. So this represents a continued steady increase of 1.5 percentage point more than in 2022, and an increase of 2.7 percentage points more than in 2021. So this gradual progress is encouraging. However, the bar has been raised as under the Renewable Energy Directive, RED 3. The EU has increased its 2030 target from 32% to 42.5%, with an ambition to reach 45%. So to meet this new goal, member states will need to increase their renewable energy shares by at least 18 percentage points in just 7 years. So this is ambitious, and it would require a strong policy support, more investment, and a faster implementation of renewable projects on the ground. And now I will leave the floor to my colleague for the next section.
Thank you so much, Katja. Well, we are seeking a clear decline in the use of fossil fuels for heating and cooling. This is positive, but to stay on track with the climate goals, we need to accelerate progress. At the same time, self-consumption of renewable energy is growing strongly, and there is a huge potential here, but we still face a few barriers that need to be addressed. Julia Pani from Fraunhofer ISI will now talk about related indicators on the chapter's focus on renewable energy sources in buildings.
Thank you very much, Uta, and good morning also from my side. As already mentioned, my name is Julia Pani, and I'm a researcher at Fraunhofer Institute for Systems and Innovation Research, and I'm very happy that today I will be able to present some selected indicators to you on renewable energy sources in buildings, and later on also investment indicators that we have been working on. So moving on to the first slide. Here on this slide, you can see all the indicators that we have calculated for RES in buildings. And out of those, I will present 4 to you today. I will start with 2 indicators for renewable energy sources in heating and cooling in buildings and urban infrastructures, the consumption shares of RES heating and cooling, and the share of renewable energy sources in district heating. And then I will move on to indicators for RES electricity in buildings, focusing on self-consumption. So moving on to the next slide. As I said, I will start with RES heating and cooling. So this first indicator that you can see here is the consumption share of RES heating and cooling in residential buildings and services. It is derived from the final energy demand data from Eurostat. And here in this figure, basically what you can see is all member states ranked by the share of renewable energy sources and waste heat in use. And that is indicated by the black shape that you can see on the graph. You can see, let's say, the well-performing member states on the right-hand side of the graph, so well-performing in terms of renewable use. And not very surprisingly, and similar to previous years, these are mostly Scandinavian and Baltic countries, with Sweden, Estonia, and Denmark leading the way. But what you can also see from this graph, and that is indicated by the quite a heavy gray shading as well, is that fossil fuels still play quite a large role in a significant number of member states. And actually compared with previous years, there was relatively little change, and that can be explained by the low exchange rates when it comes to appliances, etc., and the long lifetime of those. So moving on to the second indicator, which I will talk you through, that is the share of renewable energy sources in district heating. Here in this graph or in this image, you can see the supply mix of countries that have at least a 2% share of renewables in district heating. And again, what we can see here in this graph is a reliance on fossil fuels in still quite a large number of European member states. However, especially in Scandinavian and Baltic countries, we can also see considerable shares of biomass and biofuels indicated by the green color. Large-scale heat pumps and industrial waste heat are still less common, however, starting to pick up. Higher shares of those we can see especially in, again, Scandinavian countries, with Sweden and Finland leading the way. So in summary, what are the key takeaways for us heating and cooling in buildings? As I said, we can see that fossil fuels are still widely used in the heating and cooling sector in the European Union, and especially fossil fuel boilers, as we have seen, are still quite common. However, what we can also see is that consumption and market shares of coal and oil boilers are gradually declining, so that is good news. And also in district heating, we have some positive developments. We have for renewable sources, biofuels and biomass leading in the distribution. And overall, there is more momentum in this sector than in previous years. However, clearly more action is still needed in order to meet the energy and climate goals of that particular sector. So now moving on to res electricity, in buildings. Here I will focus primarily on self-consumption of solar PV. So what you can see here in the first figure are the self-consumption shares of some bigger EU member states, notably Italy, France, Germany, and Spain. So here we see self-consumption shares in those countries, and what we can see is that Italy, out of those 4 countries, is reaching the highest share of self-consumption in total PV electricity production, namely 25%, followed by Spain and Germany. In general, self-consumption shares increased in all of those 4 bigger member states, with Spain even, increased in all of those 4 member states. That's what I wanted to say. Then now moving on to the next slide and some smaller member states. What is the situation there? So what is noteworthy here is that shares in all of those countries or shares of self-consumption stayed either constant or also increased. So taking the example of Portugal, here we can see an increase in the share of self-consumption from 27 to 30% from 2022 to 23, and we have similar developments in other countries. However, what can also be seen is that in some of the countries the share stayed constant. So now moving on to the next indicator, which is the economic self-consumption potential. Here what we can see basically is the most rational household decision, assuming that households are economic actors that are trying to minimize their costs, their electricity costs. So we basically looked at which decision, if you compare grid injection, self-consumption of the self-produced electricity, or no investment, which of those three decisions is the most rational in each of the countries for stereotypical households. And here we can basically see, indicated by the green color, that in the majority of the countries, self-consumption is actually the economically most rational or most reasonable choice, because that's where the highest revenues would occur. And only in Malta and Luxembourg, our results indicated that grid injection is still more profitable than self-consumption, which can be explained by still a relatively high feed-in remuneration in place in those countries. Then already moving on to the key takeaways for the sector. So we can see that definitely self-consumption is widespread phenomenon that has been growing in recent years in most of the analyzed member states. So a phenomenon that is definitely here with us to stay. From an economic point of view, self-consumption is the most dominant or obvious choice in the majority of member states, and there are only very few exceptions to that. However, what we can also see is that that there is still untapped potential for self-consumption in many of the European member states. So there's room for growth. And also our analysis points to the fact that key barriers for the further pickup of self-consumption are probably not within direct support mechanisms, but they might be found in indirect hurdles such as administrative processes or other issues. And with that, I'm briefly handing it back to Uta.
Yeah, thank you, Julia. Well, we will talk, or we will listen to some findings about investment indicators. Well, investments have increased and in some cases recovered in both the photovoltaic and wind energy sector. And it's again Julia Pani who will talk about those indicators. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Uta. So we are now switching topics completely, moving on to the investment indicators. So here on the first slide, what you can see is our calculations for the wind sector, so both onshore and offshore wind. So in the top image, what you can see are investments for both onshore and offshore wind. With onshore the darker shade and offshore the lighter blue shade. And in the lower image, you can see capacity added with the same colors used. So overall, what can be said? The wind sector experienced a steady increase in onshore wind investments, and what was really noteworthy, remarkable in terms of offshore wind, comparing 2022 and 2023, is that there was a complete recovery. So we already heard from Katja that 2022 was, let's say, a disappointing year in terms of renewable energy developments, and that also is true for, especially is true for the offshore wind sector. So 2023 was a complete recovery of the sector. And what can we see for capacity added? So in total, we can see that there was quite a significant increase in capacity added amounting to an increase of 74% from 2022 to 23, which of course is also largely due to the developments in offshore wind. When we look at the countries, actually we see that Germany was leading the way both in onshore and offshore wind. Then moving on to the next slide and the developments in photovoltaic sector. So as for solar PV, what we can say is that the sector continues basically to show increasing investment, so that trend has carried on. And yeah, in 2022, investments in the sector can be estimated, or our results indicate that they can be estimated to 39 billion euros. And we can expect even higher numbers for 2023. What can we say in terms of distribution of investments? Investment in plants below 30 kilowatts, and on the other hand, investments in utility scale installations contribute to more than 40% each of those investments. What we can also say is that investment patterns are quite inhomogeneous across member states, with large differences in terms of in what the countries invest. So for example, in Spain, the majority of investments are made into utility scale centralized plants, whereas in countries like Sweden or Czechia, for example, the majority of investments are made into distributed small scale installations. In terms of countries, again, Germany shows highest investments, and followed by the Netherlands and Spain. Now, moving on already to the key takeaways for the investment indicators. Yeah, in summary, what have we seen? Investments have increased, and in some cases, especially offshore wind, of course, even recovered. Germany was showing highest investments in both wind and PV. Yeah, as for investment costs, we saw a slight increase since 2021 for onshore wind, specific investment costs for wind offshore and solar PV started to decrease. And that is it from me. So I'm handing back to Uta again.
Thank you, Julia. Well, socioeconomic impacts, the next chapter. With the increasing share of renewable energy deployments come increasing job opportunities as modeled by the researchers at TNO. How many jobs are created by this? Floris Uhlemann will tell us. Floris Uhlemann from TNO. The floor is yours.
The floor is yours. Thank you. No, thanks, Jutta. My name is Floris Uhlemann from TNO. I'll be discussing a few of the next topics in this webinar, starting with the socioeconomic impacts. And over the past years, within this project, we have been developing a methodology to estimate the employment and turnover of the renewable energy sectors within the EU. And the methodology that we used here was a modeling approach compared to survey approach that are also often used. We focused on the modeling approach, just that we can provide consistency over time in our data updates. This year's methodology hasn't been updated, so we basically just moved on with updating the data for each of the sectors. If you want to know more about the methodology, feel free to read the report. I won't go into that at the moment, because it is interesting, I think, with the time being, to look more at what type of results do we get out of these employment estimates. And typically, we look at 3 different indicators. In this section, we look at employment, so real FTE job opportunities have been created, turnover, which will be on the next slide, and gross value added, which we won't go into due to time. But starting with employment numbers, on the right side, you see a figure of the 2022 and 2023 data, within colors, of course, the different member states. And what we see is that compared to 2022, the total employment has increased to about 1.86 million jobs in the EU, which provides about a 14% increase towards last year. And maybe good to mention that this trend we also see in the previous years. Last year it was also a 14% increase. And this is about 230,000 jobs that have been created extra across all sectors. This is not just an average trend. You also see regional trends. So about 22 out of the 27 member states saw an increase in this job creation, where the top 5 countries, so the countries with the most jobs across all sectors, are Germany, Italy, and Spain, followed by France and Poland. The biggest sectors in employment are PV, heat pumps, and wind. In a similar method, we estimate turnover across the sectors, and we also see a similar trend here across the member states, that compared to 2022, we saw a 13% increase of turnover across the sectors, and also across the wide variety of member states that have shown these increases. Some final highlights about these socioeconomic indicators. The largest growth in employment was found in Spain compared to 2022, which was a big increase that was mainly due to also the newly installed PV that has grown in this country and in this sector. Currently, in these estimates, PV provides about 30% of the job opportunities across the EU. So this became the largest sector, which is followed by the sectors of heat pumps and wind energy. And in terms of employment growth, PV showed the biggest growth, followed by wind energy, about a 22% growth. I think I'll hand back to you, Jutta.
Yeah, thank you. Well, one of the key drivers behind the growth of renewables is cost and competitiveness, for which renewables show promising trends. And it's again Floris from TNO who will continue to talking about this. Thanks.
Yes, so costs, prices, competitiveness, all topics very relevant in this era. And I guess in the next slides, I'll walk you through how in this project we've been estimating these types of indicators. The first one is the levelized cost of energy. This is a model that we've been updating over the past years as well, and providing estimates across the sectors that we mentioned throughout this presentation already. On the left side, we present the renewable investment costs for the year of 2024 in million euros per megawatt. And you see a different variety of wind and PV and bioenergy there. These costs have been updated according to projections of the JRC studies that we take as a reference also throughout the cost estimations. And on the right side, the final results of the levelized cost of energy. This is across the European Union, and the ranges represent the differences between countries and between technologies. What we can see is that the average estimates of the levelized cost of energy across these technologies are between 50 and about 170 euros per megawatt hour, or 7 to about 17 cents per kilowatt hour. Then there is one of the parts of calculating the levelized cost of energy is also the weighted average cost of capital. This is an indicator that we've also established within this project, and I'll give you a brief update on how we estimate this parameter and show you the results in the next slide. So basically, the weighted average cost of capital is one way of measuring how the risk of technology updates and investing in these types of renewable energy sectors. In this project, we use the bottom-up approach to provide also consistency over time using similar data sets and expert judgment on trying to get each parameter to take a case in this end results. Every year we update this data, and what we typically get is that the different parameters that make up the WACC, as we call it, are shown in this table below. So we see a technology risk across the sectors, and then the cost of equity and the debt to equity ratios. And just a short mention of two variances of compared to last year is that the wind onshore and solar PV debt to equity ratio have decreased, mainly due to the lower debt interest rates that have occurred due to the economic conditions. What we then get as the final results is a big table where for each member state there is a low, average, and high estimate for each of the sectors. And I hope that you won't read every percentage point at the moment, but what I would like to address is that typically we see a lower WACC estimates for technologies that are more mature, and also for countries that show more stable and political conditions. And furthermore, we see higher WACC estimates for the less mature technologies that have riskier deployment rates and more unstable conditions. For the full results, I refer to the report, and there's tables there that you can use. So this was it for this section. Back to you, Jutta.
Yeah, we will continue with you, and you will talk about innovation and competitiveness indicators. Well, investing in research, development, and innovation is widely recognized as the foundation for technological progress and an important driver for economic growth. Furthermore, in today's uncertain geopolitical climate, understanding trade dependencies can be important for making smart policy decisions. I give it back now again to Floris Uhlemann, who will talk about innovation and competitiveness indicators. Thank you.
Thank you, Jutta. Yes, indeed, challenging times, and I think this project, or at least the EurObserv'ER, tries to provide input in a data-based way. So one of the first tables that we also show in the report is about investments in R&D. And we split that up into two parts. One is the public investments, which you see on this page, and there's also private investments in the next slide. Typically, we see public investments across the member states in this NRD and in the next table. And we also provide the share of public spendings by GDP. In the report, we also show countries outside of the EU, where we do see that the US has the highest public expenditures across the globe. But within the EU, France, Spain, and Germany show the highest public spendings. And in total, the EU 27 countries and the European Commission together show quite an increase compared to the year before, with more than 1.7 billion euros invested in as public money in R&D. Going towards the private investments, here we see Germany as the leading country within the EU on private R&D expenditure of about 784 billion euros. Second highest spendings are from Denmark, which also show the highest share of GDP invested in research and development. The sectors across the renewable energy sectors we provide also in the report table on per sector, and we see that about almost 70% of these spendings go to wind energy and about 17% to solar. And the total investments have decreased slightly to 2 billion euros, while the GDP share has also decreased a bit in the private sector. Then there's a final part of this section that shows the shares in renewable energy exports and imports and exports. So really the trade aspects between the countries. There's some nice pictures as the one on the right in the report across the sectors as well. This one shows the trade for all RES technologies combined. And I'm not sure if you can really read it, but I'll show a few highlights. So across the EU, we see an extremely strong trade position for wind power, with about 70%, 75% coming from EU companies. The EU is also leading in biofuels and hydropower, and is second in PV. And of course, the biggest exporter in PV is China, and they still see increases there in their PV exports, but also in hydro and wind power, they're increasing their exports. Furthermore, the US is second in the total of exports, and Brazil is third in biofuels. So a sector that has been distinguished by these countries. And on this visualization, just to depict a bit what you see here, there's the red arrows and red circles that show the negative trade emissions, the negative trade balance, and the green show the positive trade. But it's if you like to learn more about the differences between the sectors, these lovely pictures are in the report as well. I think that was it from my side. Thanks, and back to you, Jutta.
Yeah, thank you. Yes, we download the report and study the numbers. But before you do so, we would love to talk also about avoided fossil fuel use and avoided greenhouse gas emissions. As there is an increase in the use of renewable energy, we are cutting back on fossil fuel consumption, both domestic and imported, which also means lower costs. To put it in a perspective, in 2023, renewables helped replace about 206 million tons of oil equivalents compared to the level from the year 2005. And it is Ilse Morkens from Vito who will give us some more details. Ilse, you are muted. So. Ilse, you're unfortunately still muted.
Yes.
Thank you.
I found the button. Thank you. Thank you, Jutta. And my name is Els Morkens from Vito. I worked on avoided fossil fuel use in this project and avoided greenhouse gas emissions and avoided costs together with my colleague Gert Knoops. I think I'm a little bit too fast. Yes, this is the first one. So the amount of avoided fossil fuels is yearly analyzed by the European Environment Agency and its topic center on climate mitigation. And in this project, we build further on the work done there. The fossil fuel types assumed to be substituted are transport fuels, diesel and gasoline, fuels used for heating, and that are gaseous fuels, petroleum products, and non-renewable waste, and fuels used for the production of electricity, a mix of gaseous, solid, and oil products. The avoided fossil fuel costs are based on country-specific fuel prices. We derive from multiple sources like Eurostat, the European Commission, and NASDAQ. We focus here in the presentation on the combined effect for the EU 27. In the barometer report, you can also find the figures with results per country. Important to note here is that we use 2005 as a reference year, since the achieved progress EU-wide in renewable energy deployment since 2005 can be largely attributed to the presence of mandatory targets in renewable energy policies. The EurObserv'ER estimates are in line with the ones from the EEA. Now, looking at the results, we see that for 2023, we avoided 206 megaton oil equivalent. This went up a little bit from 2022. It came from 194 there in 2022, so it's around 6% up. To have an indication of the magnitude of that, 206 megaton oil equivalent is around 85% of fossil fuel consumption of Germany in 2023. This all led to, for the EU 27, to avoided expenses of 117 billion. And those went down from around 165 in 2022. And that is mainly because of the fossil fuel prices decreasing again a little from the high prices in 2022. And then also to have an order of magnitude here, 170 billion, it's roughly the Slovakian GDP. On the graphs, you can see which are the most substituted fossil fuels. A lot of the majority is the gaseous fuels, which are substituted with around 40% in 2023. Followed by the solid fuels, 32%, and the petroleum products, 19%. Then in the graph on the left side, you can also see how the avoided expenses are distributed over the different renewable energy technologies, which technologies led to the highest avoided expenses. And we see there that onshore wind is has the largest contribution here in the avoided expenses, followed by solar and solid biomass, together with renewable transport biodiesels at the same level. Then in the project, we also based on the avoided fossil fuels, calculate the avoided greenhouse gas emissions. So these are based on the data from Eurostat to calculate primary energy consumption, and on emission factors from the European Commission in regulation from 2012. Those emission factors really related to fossil fuels are rather stable. So for 2023, the total avoided emissions for the EU 27 amounted to around 653 megaton megaton CO2 equivalent. And those also went around 6% up compared to 2022. The total emissions in 2023 were around 3,240 megaton, and that led to a reduction of around 16.8% compared to the level of the use of renewable energy in 2005. And that was it for my part. I hand back to Jutta.
Thank you so much. This was a lot, right? Who would love to recall this? The meeting was recorded. We will provide a recording as soon as possible. And who would love to study this in a printed version? We have some exemplars here at Renewables Academy in Berlin, and also the partners have some exemplars. And thanks to all the speakers, the project partners, and we would have some minutes for questions. I do not see any question in the chat. If there are questions, so take the chance right now. If not, feel free to contact us. So we would even allow to ask, to ask questions right now, not only in the chat. Otherwise, we would close this virtual live session quite soon. So, no questions? Then I would like to thank you, the audience, for the attention, the partners, and today also the speakers for all this work that was done. And yes, you will find the recording of this session, as well as the download link for the report and the executive summary on the project's website, EurObserv'ER.org. Thank you so much.